In the heart of Brazil's Pantanal, where the morning mist dances over endless wetlands and the sound of exotic birds fills the air, Jorge Avalo had found his paradise. At 60 years old, this weathered caretaker had spent decades working on remote fazendas, but nothing had prepared him for what would unfold on that isolated cattle ranch in Mato Grosso do Sul. The locals called him Jorginho, a nickname that carried the warmth of familiarity, the kind reserved for someone who had earned respect through years of honest work under the relentless Pantanal sun. The fazenda where Jorge worked stretched for thousands of acres, a patchwork of pastures-dense forest, and winding rivers that served as natural highways for the region's most magnificent predator, the Jaguar, or as Brazilians call it, the onça pintada. These aren't the jaguars you see in documentaries from a safe distance. These are 200-pound killing machines, apex predators whose bite force exceeds that of any big cat on Earth, capable of crushing turtle shells and caiman skulls with ease. In the Pantanal, humans are visitors, and jaguars are the landlords who've held the deed for thousands of years. Jorge had noticed her first in early 2023. A magnificent female, her golden coat adorned with perfect rosettes that seemed painted by nature's most skilled artist. She would appear at the edge of the property, always at dusk, always watching. The other workers would retreat indoors when they spotted her, but Jorge remained curious rather than afraid. He had worked with dangerous animals before, bulls, snakes, caimans, and had developed an almost supernatural sense for reading their intentions. This jaguar, he told his nephew later, seemed different. She wasn't hunting, she was observing. As weeks turned to months, an extraordinary relationship began to form. The jaguar would appear more frequently, sometimes in broad daylight, positioning herself where Jorge could see her as he went about his daily routine. She would watch him repair fences, tend to the cattle, and maintain the ranch's infrastructure. Jorge began talking to her, the way lonely people talk to pets or plants, finding comfort in the one-sided conversation. He named her Moça, the girl, and would save scraps of meat from his meals, leaving them on a wooden platform near the main house. The meat would disappear overnight, and Jorge convinced himself he had found a companion in the wilderness. The ranch owner, visiting from the city, was horrified when he learned about Jorge's interactions with the jaguar. He ordered the caretaker to stop feeding the animal immediately, warning that he was creating a dangerous association between humans and food. But Jorge, isolated for months with only occasional visits from supply trucks, had formed an emotional bond that transcended common sense. He continued the feeding ritual in secret, convinced that his relationship with Moça was special, that somehow he had achieved what wildlife experts claimed was impossible, a peaceful coexistence with one of nature's most efficient killers. The signs were there, visible to anyone trained in jaguar behavior. Moça had begun showing up during daylight hours, a significant behavioral shift that indicated she was becoming habituated to human presence. She lingered closer to the main house, sometimes appearing just meters from where Jorge worked. Her body language had changed too, less cautious, more confident, displaying the territorial swagger of an animal that no longer viewed humans as a threat to be avoided. Wildlife biologists would later explain that Jorge had unknowingly triggered a dangerous transformation in the jaguar's perception of humans, turning from cautious coexistence to something far more sinister. The morning of the attack began like any other. Jorge woke before dawn, as he had for countless mornings before, to the symphony of the Pantanal coming alive. Howler monkeys announced the sunrise with their haunting calls, while caimans splashed in nearby ponds and exotic birds painted the air with brilliant flashes of color. Jorge prepared his simple breakfast: coffee, bread, and leftover meat from the previous day's meal. Out of habit, he set aside a portion for Moça, wrapping it in paper as he had done hundreds of times before. The wooden deck attached to the main house served as Jorge's outdoor office, a place where he could monitor the vast property while enjoying the morning breeze that provided relief from the Pantanal as oppressive humidity. Security cameras installed by the ranch owner for monitoring cattle thieves captured the routine of Jorge's daily life, a solitary figure moving through his tasks with the methodical precision of someone who had found purpose in isolation. At approximately 7:30 a.m., the cameras recorded Moça's arrival. She approached with the confidence of a regular visitor, her powerful muscles rippling beneath her spotted coat as she moved through the morning shadows. Jorge greeted her as he always did, speaking in the gentle tones reserved for a trusted friend. He placed the meat on the platform, just as he had done countless times before, and turned his back to continue his morning routine. What happened next unfolded with the terrifying speed that makes jaguars the most feared predators in the Americas. In a movement captured in horrifying detail by the security cameras, Moça launched herself at Jorge with explosive force. Her massive paws struck his shoulders, sending him crashing to the wooden deck. The attack wasn't the frenzied mauling one might expect from a wild animal. It was precise, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Moça's powerful jaws clamped down on Jorge's skull with bone-crushing force, and within moments, the man who had considered her a friend was dead. The gruesome irony wasn't lost on wildlife experts who later reviewed the case. Jorge's nephew, speaking through tears at the funeral, made an observation that would haunt everyone who heard it. She didn't tame the jaguar tamed him. The feeding ritual that Jorge believed represented friendship had actually been a slow-motion training process, with Moça conditioning the human to provide food on demand. When the routine was established, she simply collected what she had come to view as her rightful property, not just the meat, but dominance over the territory that included the human who lived there. The security footage, which would later be analyzed by researchers studying human-jaguar conflicts, revealed the true nature of what Jorge had misinterpreted as friendship. In the weeks leading up to the attack, Moça's behavior had shown all the classic signs of a predator assessing prey. Her increasingly bold approaches weren't expressions of trust. They were reconnaissance missions. Her calm demeanor wasn't peace. It was the patience of an apex predator that had identified an easy target and was waiting for the optimal moment to strike. The rescue operation that followed became a dramatic testament to the dangers faced by those who work in jaguar territory. When Jorge failed to answer radio calls, ranch hands approached the main house with weapons drawn, knowing that whatever had happened to their colleague, the perpetrator might still be nearby. They found Jorge's body on the deck, and Moça lying in the shade beneath the platform, still guarding what she apparently considered her kill. The jaguar showed no fear of the approaching humans, a behavioral abnormality that confirmed she had lost her natural wariness of people. The next 48 hours turned into a tense standoff between humans and predator. Moça refused to leave the area, treating the ranch house as her territory. She would disappear into the surrounding forest during the day, only to return each evening, prowling the perimeter and occasionally approaching the deck where Jorge had died. Local authorities, working with wildlife officials, organized a capture operation involving 7 trained personnel equipped with tranquilizer equipment and protective gear. The operation resembled a military mission more than a typical animal rescue, reflecting the extreme danger posed by a jaguar that had lost its fear of humans. The capture itself became a study in the raw power and intelligence of South America's apex predator. Even tranquilized, Moça remained partially conscious and combative, requiring multiple doses of sedatives that would have killed most animals her size. Her muscular frame, built for taking down caimans and tapirs, proved nearly impossible to restrain safely. The veterinary team later described her as one of the most physically impressive jaguars they had ever encountered, a 140-pound female in perfect health, with the scars and muscle definition of an experienced hunter. At the wildlife rehabilitation facility, Moça's behavior continued to confound experts. Unlike typical jaguars brought into captivity, she showed no stress behaviors, no attempts to hide or avoid human contact. Instead, she displayed what researchers described as problematic human orientation, actively seeking interaction with her caretakers and showing aggressive responses when ignored. This behavior, while fascinating from a scientific perspective, sealed her fate. A jaguar that associates humans with food and territory cannot be safely released back into the wild, nor can she be maintained in captivity without extreme risk to caretakers. The facility's director faced an impossible decision. Moça was a magnificent specimen of one of the world's most endangered big cats, a species with fewer than 15,000 individuals remaining in the wild. Every jaguar represents precious genetic diversity in a population under constant pressure from habitat loss and human encroachment. Yet this particular animal had crossed a behavioral line that made her too dangerous to exist in any situation involving human contact. The decision to euthanize her sparked passionate debates among conservationists, with some arguing that Jorge's death was the result of human error, not predatory aggression. Jorge's family, devastated by their loss, found themselves at the center of a complex discussion about human responsibility and wildlife interactions. His nephew revealed that Jorge had been warned repeatedly about feeding the jaguar, both by the ranch owner and by visiting workers who understood the dangers. Yet Jorge, isolated and lonely, had found companionship in the most unlikely and dangerous place. His letters to family members, discovered after his death, described Moça in terms typically reserved for beloved pets, revealing the depth of his misunderstanding about the nature of their relationship. The incident sparked renewed efforts to educate people living and working in Jaguar territory about the critical importance of maintaining natural barriers between humans and predators. Wildlife officials began conducting workshops at remote ranches, explaining that feeding jaguars, even with the best intentions, represents a death sentence for both humans and animals. The message was stark but necessary. In the world of apex predators, there are no friendships, only relationships based on dominance, territory, and survival. Jorge Avalo's death became a tragic case study in the complex relationship between humans and wildlife in one of the world's most biodiverse regions. His story serves as a haunting reminder that nature's most beautiful creatures are also its most dangerous, and that the line between coexistence and catastrophe can be crossed with a single act of misguided kindness. In the Pantanal, where jaguars still reign supreme, respect and distance aren't just recommended, they're the difference between life and death. The wooden platform where Jorge used to leave meat for Moça still stands on the ranch, now empty and weathered by Pantanal storms. Local workers avoid the area, and new caretakers are briefed extensively about the dangers of humanizing wild predators. The security cameras continue to record the daily life of the ranch, but now they capture only the natural rhythms of a place where humans and jaguars maintain the distance that nature intended, a boundary that Jorge Avalo crossed at the ultimate cost.